Mr. TT Srinivasaraghavan joins us now, Managing Director with Sundaram Finance. Mr. Raghavan, good morning. Thank you for joining us. When we spoke to you last, you were cautiously optimistic and you said that you were taking your lending activity, or what you were lending with a lot of caution. A lot has changed in terms of the outlook and what the underlying current of the economy is. Are you now confident that 2021 will be a year of comeback and full bloom?
I don't know about full bloom, Nikunj, but thanks for the recap. The good news is that 2020 has been such a terrible year, anything will be better, unless this new mutant virus kills that party. I think we're starting from probably the lowest base that we've ever had in a long time. So on a relative basis, 21 should definitely look better. However, if you look at specific segments, if you look at commercial vehicles, for example, they've been in free fall since October 2018, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then it's one thing after the other, axle load, then economy slowdown, then BS6, then COVID. So it's really gone into free fall. So if you look at, where the CV industry was in terms of TIV, let's say in early 2018, and where we are today, I think what you'll have to track is how long is it going to be before we get back to somewhere close to those levels. So versus this year, versus previous quarter will look great, no doubt. But I would use my benchmark as something that was what we would consider normal times. So that's as far as CV is concerned. But that's not to deny that there haven't been some bright sparks. I think Pascar, again relative, but Pascar certainly there's been a bounce back. Also tractors, which has certainly been a very good story. And to a lesser extent on construction equipment. So these are three segments which I would say have sort of really given us some hope, some optimism for the coming year. And hopefully on the CV side, maybe in H2, we should start to see a revival, is my sense, especially on the heavies. So overall, to answer, it's a long answer to your question, but overall, I think towards the later part of FY22, we should see some real life coming back.
Okay. Now, interest rates, all of us assuming, will remain low, and the cost at which you're borrowing right now is also an historic low. Could the dynamics change? Could the dynamics change because of inflation, because of what's happening, and that in a sense could change a lot of spreads and your forward-looking assumptions?
The broad answer is yes. What I'm not able to predict is, when the interest rate cycle will turn, because you're right, this is a historic low, almost, dreamlike, and for good reason. The imperative now is clearly growth, and therefore the central bank is doing everything it can to propel growth, to support growth. So where they are now is appropriate, but obviously you can't hold interest rates at these levels forever, right? So again, if the positive news that's flowing through, if all the stuff that people are talking about, lower contraction, greater rebound and all of better than expected rebound, if all of this is true, then I think in probably the April policy statement, we could see a beginning of a reversal. May not be very sharp, but I do believe, in calendar 21, definitely we will start to see, I think, a reversal in the direction of interest rates.
Can I say that your fortunes are completely linked to the economy, and depending on how the economy is going to progress, you would be a lag indicator? I'm asking a very basic question because for those who are looking at, let's say, investing in your stock, they need to understand that what are the factors they should consider. For those who invest in your stock, they always look at one data: how much truck sales are being done, what is happening to the government spending in construction sector. So this time around, would you be a lead indicator or a lag indicator?
I don't know if we've had this conversation before, but I think CV as an industry, to my mind, stopped being a lead indicator more than 10 years ago. In the old days, it used to be that, truck sales were sort of the bellwether. I think that changed. Ever since 55% of our economy became services driven, I think that dynamic shifted. I mean, there are people who debate me on this. So to my mind, we have been a lag indicator for some time now. So that hasn't changed. So definitely, yes, lag, not lead.
Fair enough. Mr. Raghavan, what's your outlook now going forward when it comes to the kind of trends as you've described and you're foreseeing and you're shaping your outlook and strategy for the year ahead? In terms of NPAs, for example, in terms of growth guidance strategy, are you working with any set numbers or targets at the moment?
The short answer is no. And the reason for that is, I think, we're still dealing with too many unknowns. So I think it's one thing to hope, which all of us do, but in terms of planning, I think, if you can sort of call the next 2 months right, you're doing a great job. Actually, for most of the year, up till December, all our planning has been on a month-to-month basis, right? I mean, of course, you have some Excel sheets which show what it's going to look like 6 months out and 12 months out. But honestly and realistically, I think if you can get the next 2 months right, you're doing very well. Because even the upturn that we've seen in the last 2 months, so far the explanations largely have been about pent-up demand being released. Then, of course, the festive season starting with Ganpati, then Dashera, Diwali. December, there's a little bit of sales that's induced by the, price increases which have already been announced for January. So some of that price protection sale is happening in December. So for many of us, it's really about saying, so far, so good. How is Q4 going to be? Because traditionally, both for car, two-wheeler and truck sales, Q4 has been a big quarter. Now, it remains to be seen whether Q4 this year is going to be anywhere near what we are normally accustomed to, or this is also going to be a COVID-impacted Q4. So I think the jury is still very much out on that. Of course, all of us have our own pet theories, and we're making some cautious predictions and all of that. But the truth is, I think Q4 will be actually a very good test of what lies ahead in FY22.
Okay. And in light of that, given that, you have said it's difficult to predict, but nonetheless, CVs, they haven't been the most, up and coming segment so far this year. But do you see some, some traction or some sense of a revival coming in the new year when it comes to the CV segment?
Okay, let me actually bring some balance to that. When I say CV, I've been largely referring to the higher end, the heavy trucks. At the lower end, what we call the intermediates and the light commercial vehicles, and especially the small commercial vehicles, there's been a reasonable amount of rebound. I think, just to be fair and just to keep the balance right, it's not been a disaster right across. So at the lower end, thanks to e-commerce, thanks to a lot more stuff being home delivered, also because of the rural economy bouncing back. At the lower end, actually, the small and light commercial trucks have done quite well. I think I should acknowledge that. It shouldn't appear as though it's completely bleak. My comments largely were related to the heavy commercial trucks, which is where a lot of this gloom is there. But as I say, I think even within that, tippers are doing better than the haulage segment, because tippers apparently are tied to construction, they're tied to infrastructure, where there's a reasonable amount of activity. It's on the long haul long haulage trucks where, it's really been beaten down. And that's the one which is going to take a while, to my mind, to come back. So, that's sort of, the full story on commercial vehicle. But, our country is so dependent on road transportation. So it's not as though this is, something that we need to worry about forever. I mean, we're going through a really, never before seen slump, but this is not purely COVID induced. As I said, this started in October 18 for a variety of other reasons. It's been a long drop, but, hopefully it should turn around.
Closing comments. If I look at what's happening in the fintech space, all disruption and innovation is happening in the UPI front. It is happening on the retail lending business. Systems are being used so that you can get a faster loan and a quicker loan. In the business which you represent, which is CV financing, I have not seen, heard, or aware of too many fintech disruptions. Why is that?
Well, see, the CV business, as you'll appreciate, Nikunj, is still very much in what I would call the semi-organized sector. It's still very much a mom and pop business, right? I mean, there are some large logistics and fleet players, of course, at the top end who obviously gain far more media attention. But the nuts and bolts of this industry is really individuals, owner drivers, father and son, brothers who run this business. And that model is still very much a relationship-driven model, right? And which is why NBFCs still continue to be very, very relevant, because that is a segment. It's not that those guys don't, understand technology. It's not that they are not using digital tools and things like that. I mean, we shouldn't underestimate them, but it's just the way that they function, that they are far more comfortable, I think, based on person to person, because their needs. And at a time like now, for example, where many of them, their livelihoods have been completely smashed, right? They won't be able to pay installments for the next 6-9 months. And if you're a faceless digital customer, it becomes very difficult. Whereas now they're able to walk into one of our offices, able to sit down with one of our guys and say, listen, my life's been torn apart. This is the help I need. I can do this after 3 months. I can do this after 6 months. So please help me. So we can handhold him, nurse him through this process. Now, if it's a faceless thing, as it happens with, a lot of the retail lending, this stuff wouldn't work. So this is, in a way, a unique, ecosystem. That's not to say it will never change. I'm sure it will somewhere down the track. But right now, it is still very much, as I said, a mom and pop small business operation. And therefore, the model is necessarily different from what you see in most other parts of the financial services industry.
Final question. We've spoken about growth, but we've not focused on recovery at all. What's been your experience in terms of loan recoveries, repayments, and installments?
Loan recoveries have actually been surprisingly better than I think what most people had feared. But there are sectors of the economy. For example, if you look at tourism, if you look at the entire bus transportation segment, whether it's school buses, staff transportation buses, or even overnight buses, the entire bus transportation segment has been badly affected. Tourism has been badly affected. Hospitality, of course, has been badly affected. So in those sectors, obviously, life has come to a standstill. Think of a Rajasthan, for example, or think of a Kerala, where tourism is such a large part of their economies. There is some very real stress. And that is where things like restructuring come into play. Because for these small guys, that one bus is his livelihood, right? That's his factory on wheels. So if he hasn't plied his bus for the last 6 months, and probably won't for the next 6 months, now obviously, that is an NPL. He's already an NPL. So for guys like those, we need to find them solutions which are customized to them. If it means that they took the moratorium, of course, but if it means they don't pay for the next 6 months, that's something we'll have to work with them, and make sure that they get back on their feet. So those parts of our customer base are affected. We are working with them. Of course, we're permitted by Reserve Bank to restructure these accounts. We have to make provisions as appropriate, which we are doing. But it will be, as I say, for some of these segments, it will be a slow, hard climb out of this mire. It's not going to be a cakewalk. But on the other side, you have the passenger car segment, you have the tractor segment, the construction equipment segment, which are all doing fine. They're back to normal. In fact, during the moratorium, our experience was that roughly 50% of our customers opted for moratorium, 50 did not. And of those who did not, our collections during the moratorium were running at about 95% on the non-morat book, right? And after the moratorium, slowly, those who've been able to build their lives back have come back, they've started paying. And as I say, a section of them, the language is of restructuring. But there will be stress. I don't think we should pretend that everything will be hunky-dory just because moratorium's gone away, everything's going to be fine. It won't be fine. I think there will be some increased stress. I suspect you will see some stress showing through in the Q3 accounts for most lenders. But then after that, hopefully they should stabilize as people get their lives back on track. And, given the due support from lenders, I think at least most of them should be able to rebuild their livelihoods.
Okay, Mr. Srinivasaraghavan, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us. And here's wishing you a very happy new year and season's greetings from all of us. We'll chat again in 2021, hopefully with better news.